Welcome to the Money Smart for Adults Module 12, Making Housing Decisions. We're going to go through this instructor guide and highlight how you can facilitate this training. As in all other modules, it starts out here with a contents page, giving you all the information relating to this module listed by section and page number so that you know exactly where to find things here. There's background information for instructors where you're looking at the instructor guide, participant guide, the PowerPoint slides, all for you to use during the training. The curriculum also includes a guide to presenting Money Smart for Adults. That guide is available for you to get practical tips, marketing your training, setting up your training space, supporting participants with disabilities, and actually delivering the training. The training preparation checklist is to make sure that you have everything that's going to equip you to have a successful training. So make sure you go through that, checking off everything that you have need of there. Materials, as we just mentioned, again, the instructor guide just as a checklist to make sure you have these things available as you go through this. Optional materials, there's a parking lot that you can create by writing the word parking lot up on a flip chart or a whiteboard. And then, of course, making sure that you have all your supplies that you need for any introductory activity that you may do. The icons that you see here are the same as in every other module. You can reference them here as a refresher if you need to. Now, the purpose of this module is to help participants explore options when making housing decisions. You're going to explore what safe and secure housing can mean, explain how to estimate what is affordable for housing costs, discuss renting versus buying, and explores rental agreements, renter's insurance, and rights and responsibilities in renting. Now, here's a tip. As you look at the module at a glance table, you're going to see the section, the key takeaways, purpose, objectives, and the timing. Now, depending upon your style, I want you to practice doing this, okay? And you're going to find that you may do this module faster or slower than the estimated time. It's estimated it's going to take 2 hours and 5 minutes to go through this entire training. Now, there are 3 sections to this particular module, and we're going to take our time. We're going to go through each of these sections here as a part of this overview. As you open up the training, you're going to welcome people as they arrive. And you see the welcome screen there on slide number 1. You're going to make sure that you introduce yourself, ask people to sign in to the training, and ensure any requested reasonable accommodations are in place, and of course, make any necessary adjustments. The pre-training survey. You can ask participants to complete the pre-training survey in the back of their participant guide, and you may want to give them loose copies so they don't have to tear them out. The knowledge questions are the same as those in the post-training survey, and the answer key is at the end of this instructor guide, but you're not going to share the answers now. You're just going to give them an opportunity to do that. Now, you can also set up a parking lot. You want to create a parking lot to capture the questions, concerns, ideas, and resources. Go ahead and make mention of that so people know ahead of time that the parking lot is there for them. Then, in terms of the participant guide, give them a copy. But if that's a challenge, I want you to know this. If that's a challenge as far as getting everybody a copy of the participant guide, what you may want to do is to refer to the online versions or maybe come up with some other appropriate solution for your particular audience. The optional introductory activity is really a good thing to do. You may want to really consider doing this and just making sure that you can get this in, because it's really going to help create rapport in the room, and starting out with an energizer really is a great way to get people ready to learn. And so if you can do an introductory activity, I would suggest that you do that. Now let's get into section 1. What are my options? So in this section, you're looking at helping participants to identify what they need and want in housing. You're going to list key factors to consider when deciding to rent, buy, or find another option, and then identify housing options and make choices. So So that's what we're covering here in this first section. Of course, as normal, we are introducing the topic, the section, and coming right with the key takeaway. Our key takeaway for section 1, there are different types of housing. To help prioritize your options, start by defining what safe and secure housing means to you. So right after that, we're getting into a discussion around what do you need and want in terms of making housing decisions. So you're going to start out this discussion and use the bullet points listed here because we're going to go right into a triad activity. The triad activity is what is safe and secure to you. Now, time permitting, you may want to turn this into a small group activity. Give each group a piece of paper and markers and instruct participants to work in small groups to create a poster depicting safe and secure housing. Now, challenge them to only use pictures and symbols, no words or numbers. Okay, make this a little bit fun. And of course, they're going to have to bring out their creativity to make that happen. But it's really going to really solidify the safe and secure definitions that they're going to be coming up with. So this is going to be a fun and engaging way to do this. And this is going to add about 10 minutes for this activity. Slide 5 is the actual picture of what they're seeing on page 3 in the participant guide. And the question is, how would you describe a safe and secure place to live? Give them 2 minutes to go ahead and write that down. Then after the 2 minutes, ask for a few volunteers to share their answers. Immediately following that, we're going to go into the apply it activity, making housing decisions. What do I need and want? This is a really cool checklist around these particular things because you're having the participants to think about some areas here. They're going to be thinking about their neighborhood, the actual space, and affordable features. And notice here that there are columns for each of these. They're going to be marking whether this is a need, if it's a want, if it's not important, or if they're unsure. So it's really giving them an opportunity to think these things through. Now, you may notice that each of these have other spaces here. So other is when there are particular features or elements or characteristics that they feel is important that's not listed, they can write it in and then go ahead and check whether they need it, want it, if it's important, or if they're unsure about it. But the point is that you're giving them an opportunity to really customize these lists for other areas and things that might be important to them. Our next activity is renting or buying. This is a debate activity where you're going to have the room split up into 2 different groups, and each group is going to try to present a more convincing argument around information for its side of the issue. The debates help participants to consider different viewpoints about a particular issue, such as renting a place to live versus buying a place to live. Now, you're going to divide the group into 2 teams, and I want to say this before we go further, if there are more than 16 participants, you may want to consider having 2 groups for each side of the debate. In this case, you would have one group present first, with the second group arguing the same side by adding to the first group's presentation. So one team is going to come up with a list of reasons why renting is better than buying, and then you're going to ask the other team to come up with a list of reasons why buying is better than renting. As you can see, there are bullet points to help you to facilitate the discussion around this debate, and you're basically going to give them 6 minutes to go ahead and to get things set up, and then give each team spokesperson 3 minutes to present their key points. Now, time permitting, share reasons for renting and reasons for buying that were not offered during the debate from the list that you see here on the page. And I want to say that if there's conversation that come up around reasonable modifications or reasonable accommodations, we're going to go through that in section 3, so please tell your participants that you're going to cover that a little bit later on in the training, but you are going to definitely get to it. And there's a couple of slides on that, and you want to make sure that people know that we will be discussing that as part of the training. And so the next couple of pages here in your instructor guide, again, are your bullet points that give you your scripting on reasons for renting and reasons for buying. Now that's really going to set us up for the try it activity, identifying important factors in housing decisions. This is a great opportunity to really get your participants talking about scenarios. There are 3 particular scenarios here that they're going to be looking at. They're going to be reading these scenarios. Trisha, Sydney, Mangala, and her family. These are all 3 scenarios around housing. And the idea here is to get your participants to read this and to identify the factors based on that situation that may affect housing decisions. So it's a great opportunity to really get them thinking at a more detailed level about these things. And that's going to lead into the apply it activity, which is important factors I want to consider in renting and buying. So on slide 9, it actually lists out what they're looking at in the participant guide. It's on page 9 in the participant guide. Just happened to be coincidental that slide 9 for you and page 9 in their participant guide. But it shows the questions first in terms of the important factors. And based on what they've learned from the debate and the discussions, you want to have them list the reasons to rent and the reasons to buy that are most important to them. Okay, so you want to do that. Then on the next page, it goes into should I rent or buy? Again, keeping with the same thought process around the decisions, you're going to have them use that worksheet to determine what's going to be the best choice for them right now. Now, if time permits, allow them to start that right here in your training. Now, if it doesn't permit, have them do it after the training. But if you really want to help them to really solidify these decision-making processes, it can be very empowering to have them do that, start it here, then have a few people maybe share what they're learning from the discussion, from looking at these lists or coming up with these conversations, and then provide a little bit of time for questions. So this could really enhance the training by allowing them time to do that. The apply it activity, my housing options, is a great way to have them to start thinking about their particular options for housing. We're going to start out with options for renting. There is a list there that will give them options to consider. Then the next slide, slide 13, goes into options for buying. And both of these have bullet points that you can use to help your scripting in terms of facilitating the discussion around these things. And that's great because we're going to wrap up this particular section with this discussion. And then you're going to come up with the reiteration or restatement of the key takeaway, which is there are different types of housing. To help prioritize your options, start by defining what safe and secure housing means to you. Section 2, what can I afford? The objective here is to help participants to be able to list costs associated with housing options, estimate how much they can afford to pay for housing. You're going to introduce the section and, of course, the key takeaway. An affordable payment for housing is one you can reliably make each month. So that's a great key takeaway because you're starting out by telling them that only they can decide what's affordable for them. You want your participants to be able to own that themselves and to really determine for themselves what's affordable. And so we have a try it activity estimating affordability. The scenario is Pat and Sam. Pat and Sam is a couple that's dreamed of buying a home. They've been saving for about 4 years. They've put aside about $10,000. They make $48,000 a year gross income, and their net income is $42,000. So the scenario goes into the quick way to estimate what could be affordable, and is to take their annual gross income and multiply by 3. Okay. And then there is another method to estimate affordable monthly housing costs by multiplying gross income by 30%. So this scenario gives your participants an opportunity to work through that. So slide 19 goes through the introduction of the first method of the annual gross income times 3. The next slide gets into the math using their actual numbers. So you want to share this and go through that. Then method 2 is on slide 21, where we're actually taking the gross monthly income, multiplying it by 0.30, and coming up with the math on this. And so slide 22 breaks that down. And as you can see here, there's $1,200 a month based on that formula. Now, there is a third method as well, and that's what slide 23 introduces. And this is really probably a more accurate one versus all the other ones. This third method takes into consideration the monthly income and expenses to estimate an affordable housing payment. You add up your income, subtract non-housing expenses, and see what's left over to cover all housing costs. So your participants are going to do this for Pat and Sam. You're going to give them an opportunity to go through this and to really understand where they are. And so they're going to utilize the space in the participant guide and to go ahead and figure this out. But you're going to have them do this and go through all of the numbers and then do the math. And doing the math reveals that there is $1,140 left over for housing costs. So as you round up the discussion on this, you're going to ask your participants, what are the advantages of the spending and saving plan method compared with the other two methods? So have a discussion around that. And of course, write their answers and the responses up on a flip chart or the whiteboard, and of course contribute information if not contributed by participants. Now this is a segue into the apply it activity, which is estimating what I can afford. So of course they can do this after the training to figure out what's going to be affordable for them. However, as mentioned earlier, if time permits, it can be very empowering to have them do this right in your training. Now, of course, they may not be able to finish it, but again, getting started with this and then asking a few people to share about what they're learning about it can be very, very awesome for them. It just really enhances the learning on this. And then we now have the section closing. An affordable payment for housing is one you can reliably make each month. Section 3. What's next if I decide to rent? The objectives here is participants will be able to read and understand a rental agreement, explain the purpose of renter's insurance, identify their rights and responsibilities as renters. So you're going to introduce the section and of course come right into the key takeaway. Ways to protect yourself as a renter include reading and understanding your rental agreement or lease, getting renter's insurance, and knowing your rights and responsibilities. So you're going to present information on steps to renting. There are 7 steps listed here. This starts on page 30 in the participant guide. It's slide 31 for you, and we want to go through this. Now, I want to say that as you're looking at this first slide goes and gives the entire 7 steps. Then starting with slide number 32, it takes each step individually and gives you an opportunity to have a discussion about that particular step. Now, I want to make note here that for step 2, there is an apply it, my housing options. It's on page 14 in the participant guide. And so you'll want to have your participants to do that, to think about whether they want to rent a room, rent an apartment, rent or buy a house, buy a condo or a co-op, or explore public housing options or something else. That is what that particular step is for. Step 3 is figuring out what you can afford. Again, there is another apply. It's on page 25 of the participant guide. And again, It's helping them to think about what they can afford. Step 4, understand your credit and how this may affect what you can rent. Referencing Module 6 and some of the information or worksheets there can really help enhance your participants in understanding how credit is going to impact their affordability. If they have low credit scores, which we're going to get into in a future step here in a moment, but that can definitely impact their security deposit, what they need to get together to actually move into the place. And so this may do very well for people to have a discussion by bringing in elements from Module 6. Slide 36 is your opportunity to talk about low credit scores and credit reports with negative information. This might be impactful for some people because if this is their scenario, it may cause them to spend more time looking for a rental. They may have fewer choices. They may have to pay a larger deposit than other potential renters are asked to pay. And so there might be some other considerations that they may have to really take into account if they have low credit scores or negative information on their credit. So again, using information from Module 6 can really help them to overcome this, think about it, and create a plan to actually improve those credit scores. Or they may just have to, live with the fact that they are going to pay a little bit more expensive for their rental if they have to do it while their credit scores are low. Slide 37 gets into research. Research options, you want to just mention that they can do it themselves by using their smartphones, looking into local newspapers, also getting help from a real estate agent. Okay, they are pretty reliable resources for different types of information around rental information. So again, this is why real estate agents is listed here, in addition to asking local social service agencies. Slide 38 gets into step 6, get your first month's rent and deposits together. So again, based on their scenario, they may need to pay a security deposit before they move in. So you're having a discussion around this. And a best practice here is to do some research about your state, some local rules pertaining to security deposits. Have that information, any local resources available for your training participants so that you can really give them more information around what to expect around this, because people getting together their first month's rent and deposits, all of that, it might be a challenge for some people depending upon how much that amount is. So please make sure that you give them adequate information on this so that they can be better prepared. Then, of course, step 7 on slide 39, read and understand your lease or rental agreement. Again, we're reiterating here how important this is for people to do, even though, people, you would think that they would read it, but they don't. A lot of people skip it. And so in your training, you are reiterating that people should read and understand their rental agreement. So the try it activity is exactly just that, reading a rental agreement. And so it's on page 32 in the participant guide. It's slide 40 for you. And you're going to have them take a look at an example rental agreement and fill in the questions that are listed there. This is going to be a very awesome exercise because it's giving them practice on what to look for and the types of things that they may see on a rental agreement. And you can see here that here are the 8 questions that are there. So they're going to just do a little bit of a scavenger hunt here and to go in there, pull this information out and answer those questions. The apply it for this particular topic is my lease or rental agreement checklist. So you're going to have them turn to page 35 in their participant guide and they're going to see this checklist. Now, you can say it's important that they read the lease or rental agreement before they sign it. Then if they're looking for a place to rent, you can use this checklist to help guide them through the lease or rental agreement. Now, if time permits, you can review this applied checklist with the participants using a copy from the participant guide. Now, the parts on reasonable modifications and reasonable accommodations are covered later in this module. We're going to get to that because that is important for them to understand as well. Renter's insurance. Slide 42 gives a couple of questions around renter's insurance. So you want to have this discussion. Slide 43 gets into some bullet points around the purpose of renter's insurance. And here are some bullet points in your instructor guide that can help you to facilitate your discussion. You're going to lead a discussion now on your rights as a renter. Slide 44 introduces the Fair Housing Act. Now, this act prohibits housing-related discrimination based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, or the presence of children, which is sometimes called familial status. And so you want to make sure that your training participants understand that the Fair Housing Act is really designed to help them to avoid being discriminated against. Now, there is the discussion on reasonable modifications on slide 45. Now, a resident with a disability is permitted by federal law to make and pay for reasonable modifications to the interior of an apartment and the common public areas of the building. A reasonable modification is a structural modification made to allow people with disabilities the full enjoyment of the housing and related facilities. Examples are widening of doorways, lowering kitchen cabinets, or replacing flooring to facilitate wheelchair use. Now, reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities is a change in rules, policies, practices, or services so that a person with a disability will have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling unit or common space. An example is providing a reserved parking space near a building's entrance for a tenant with a mobility impairment, even though all parking is unreserved. All rights come with responsibilities, like to keep their electricity bill paid. Okay, if something goes wrong, they have the right to have repairs made in a timely fashion, but it's their responsibility to inform the landlord. You may want to review local sources of rental assistance that could be available for them if, in fact, that's needed. Slide 47 is the announcement that they can get help. If you think your rights have been or are being violated, get help. That's what you want to say to your training participants. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development website has information on it, www.hud.gov. Navigate to the section for renters. It's under audiences, and then you'll find links to general and state-specific information. Now we move into the section closing, which is a reiteration of our key takeaway, which is ways to protect yourself as a renter include reading and understanding your rental agreement or lease, getting renter's insurance, and knowing your rights and responsibilities. So as we close out this particular module, remember the key takeaways. So reiterate to your training participants the key takeaways as listed for each of the sections here so that they really can understand what you just covered. Now, to really help them to anchor it, the take action part is here. This activity is listed at the end of each module in the Money Smart for Adults training. It's important not to skip it, even if you can only spare a couple of minutes. Your participants will remember what you just presented a lot easier if they can write down a few action steps. Knowledge isn't enough. Action is required. So go ahead and have them to do that. And once that's done, now we're going to finish up the final slide with the post-training survey. You want to thank them for attending, administer the survey, and collect them when they're done. You can use this survey to compare it against the pre-training survey so that you can see the actual movement in the knowledge, or give you an opportunity to make changes and improvement to future trainings. So that's how we end this particular module. And of course, you have the answer key for both the pre and post training surveys here so that you can compare what they wrote versus what the key says. And finally, we have the Money Smart for Adult modules here listed. As you can see, Module 12 is highlighted, and you can see where Module 12 fits into the overall curriculum of the Money Smart for Adults training. And so that's going to conclude our overview highlighting how you can facilitate Module 12, Making Housing Decisions. Thank you.